Thank you for joining us this week. As we step into our time of worship, I wanted to do something new and encourage you guys to maybe reach out to somebody you guys haven't talked to in a while during this season or haven't seen in a while. I recently went to the prayer meeting this week and was just reminded of how much I missed our fellow brothers and sisters. So I encourage you guys to maybe text somebody, especially now that we're going to a second wave of lockdown. So this week at Lighthouse Community Church, we are going to be focusing on a theme of radical love, and I wanted to share something from our Bible verse that we will be going through in today's sermon. It's going to be from Luke 10, and it says, "What is written in the law?" He replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." So I encourage you guys to reflect on this as we step into a time of worship, which is coming up next.
I search the world. I search the world. It couldn't fill me. A man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along. You put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied. Here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. My weakness, my failure and flaws, Lord, you see them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, and there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Turn mourning to dancing. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. There's nothing, oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. Sing, you turning praise into gardens. You turn praise into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who
Sing, you give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. Sing that again. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. Let's lift it up. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you Let's lift it up from our homes and all the earth. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great For you, my God, are greater still, and no sky contains, no doubt restrains all you are. The greatness of our God. I spend my life to know, and I'm far from close to all you are. The greatness of our God. Give me grace to see beyond this moment here, to believe that there is nothing left to fear, and that you alone are high above it all. For you, my God, are greater still, and no sky contains, no doubt restrains all you are. The greatness of our God. I spend my life to know, and I'm far from close to all you are. The greatness of our God. There is nothing, and there is nothing that can ever separate us. There is nothing that can ever separate us from your love. No life, no death, of this I am convinced. For you, my God, are greater still. And there is nothing that can ever separate us. There is nothing that can ever separate us from your love. No life, no death, of this I am convinced. For you, my God, are greater still. And no sky contains, no doubt restrains all you are. The greatness of our God. I spend my life to know, and I'm far from close to all you are. The greatness of our God. No words can say, or song can bring all you are. The greatness of our God. I spend my life to know, and I'm far from close to all you are. The greatness of our God, to all you are. The greatness of our
So before we sing this next song, it is a new song, so I'll just introduce it to you. It's called Promises, and we just thought this song would be really fitting for our set because the lyrics of this song are just such a wonderful description of God and of God's faithfulness and promises to us that never change, and that He is the same God from age to age. In the lyrics, you'll hear that God is our anchor and foundation. So just please join us in singing along. It's a really easy song to catch on to. So please join us in this song.
God of Abraham. God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant, of faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you do just what you say. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass.
Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
God from age to age. And God from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Your history can prove there's nothing you can do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. And great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
Sing the bridge together.
I put my faith in Jesus,
Lord God, great is your faithfulness to me, great is your faithfulness to us, God. Even in the storms, even when the winds may come, we just remain in you, and we remain, our foundation remains in you, God. And I just pray that that could remain true for us today as we dive into the word, that we continue just to surrender to you today, open our hearts, open our minds up to your word, God, and that no matter how we're feeling right now, whatever season we're in, that we would just lay it all out for you, and just that we spend this time with you, God, and we really just listen to your word. We love you so much. We thank you so much for everything, God, and we just pray for this service. In your name we pray. Amen.
Hi, thanks for joining us today. We're always glad to have you. So many of you know that I love volleyball. However, I have this terrible, embarrassing habit while I play that I just can't seem to shake off. So here's what it is. I'm about to spike, okay? And then I'm like jumping up and I'm in the air in this really cool position. And then right when I'm about to hit the ball, my mouth makes this really gross sound, and it's something along the lines of huh, or ugh. And I can't stop it. Like when I do try to stop it, it comes out even louder. And sometimes after some of my games, I have friends that come up to me after and they're like, "Oh, hey Tim, I knew you were here because I heard you." And I'm just kind of like, "Oh, really? That's embarrassing." But I just kind of, accept it and just keep playing. But there was this one time we were playing this really good team, but one person on the other side, maybe he was having an off day or something, but he was kind of saying rude remarks about our team under his breath. Like we can hear it, but not enough to make a big deal out of it. So he'd be like, "Oh yeah, our setter is doing stuff wrong," or he'd make comments about my my grunting, right? And there was this one rally, right? It was like really good rally, and then I hit the ball with the grunt, and he blocked it. And what he did after was he stood over me, and he flexed like this, and he screamed, "Ah!" like really loud. And I was like, what? And after that, I became so tilted. I lost my composure. I was like bitter and angry. I was making a bunch of unforced errors, and it wasn't a fun game anymore. And he did come to say sorry after, but as I was reflecting on the game later, I was asking myself, why do some people approach the game of volleyball in such like a friendly way, and others in a bit of a more toxic way? And I think it really depends on the reason why someone plays the game. Like the reason why they play affects the way they play. Perhaps the pleasant people, maybe they play for friendships and health, and maybe like the love of the game and like technicality of the game. But maybe the less pleasant people, they play for lesser reasons, like letting out pent up anger, or they just want to show other people that they're better than everyone else. And that's just a wild guess, but that's my theory. The reason why someone plays volleyball changes their whole approach to the game. And I think it's a good revelation, because the same would apply to life, wouldn't it? The reason why we live changes our whole approach to life. So today, I want to ask the biggest why question of life. Why do we live? In other words, what is the meaning of life? And that's a super daunting question, but we'll get through it today. Different people, they have different answers for this. Some people will be like, there's no way you can ever know, or maybe there's no reason or no purpose of life. And other people would be like, oh, it means what you make it to mean. But I think our Bible passage gives us a more satisfying answer.
And it's an answer that motivates us to live a life that is meaningful and effective and enjoyable. Even the most mature Christian needs to apply this answer to their lives better. And here it is. What is the meaning of life? Well, the meaning of life is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. There's a really good chance you've heard of this answer before because it's been around our Christian tradition for almost like 500 years now. But my goal today is to show how this answer is completely true and how it can change our lives for the better. Today we're starting a new series in Genesis. And Genesis is the first book of the Bible. And right there on the first page of the Bible, it tells you what the meaning of life is. You just kind of have to think like in ancient Hebrew. But join me as I read Genesis 1:26 to 28. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." And that's our Bible passage. We'll start with our first point. The meaning of life is to glorify God. Once in a while, as I'm scrolling through Facebook on my phone, I come across articles that say something along the lines of this. I'll be like, 15 everyday items you're using completely wrong. And obviously, I'm going to click it. And when I do, I'm usually mind blown, right? Some of them, they're more well known. For example, like Coke cans with the tabs. You're supposed to stick a straw through the tab so that it keeps it in place. But there are others that are more useful and I found pretty mind-blowing. So here's some of them. Chinese takeout boxes were meant to be brought home and turned into paper plates. Who knew? If you're a driver, on your rear view mirror is a little tab at the bottom. And that tab is for, like, if someone behind you is high beaming you and like you're being blinded by it, you flip that tab and it does something that so that you can still see out the back window, but you're not affected by the light as much. That's pretty cool. And finally, this one I didn't find out until a few years ago, but on your dashboard you have a gas gauge and you have like this like gas bar icon with an arrow beside it, right? And it's pointing somewhere. It actually points to which side of the car your gas tank is on. And that's helpful for like when you get a new car or when you're like renting and you're like, okay, that now I know. And these are like everyday things that we can often miss, right? But when we use it the way it was intended, it becomes a much better product. In a similar way, when we live the way we were created to live, it's the best life we can chase after, and the one that glorifies God the most. The Bible verse that we're zoning in on is verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So we're introduced to this super fascinating idea here, right? It says we're made in God's image, right? What does that even mean? Because I used to think it just meant God looked like a human, right? He had 2 eyes and 4 limbs and a nose and a mouth and whatever. But it's more than that. Right? It's much more than that. To get the gist of it, we have to first understand what an image was back then. Most often, an image was actually a statue of a god. Like, have you ever walked into an Asian restaurant and saw a statue of Buddha? It would be similar to that, right? When people saw the statue, it would remind them of the god, and it would inspire respect and worship. And the image would portray the nature of the god. So like when we see Buddha, for example, he's often fatter. So that symbolizes his abundance and his prosperity, right? He's rich, and he usually has this huge smile on his face, showing that his nature is very happy, right? The god offers prosperity and riches and happiness. And we humans are described as the image of God, the God, Yahweh. And we actually glorify God most when we reflect his characteristics in our thinking and in our feeling and in our actions. But what is God's most defining characteristics? Well, it is love. You probably could have guessed that. But we learn this in Exodus 34, where God shows Moses his glory. And we see that God's glory comes from the greatness of his love. And he tells us to love like him, because that's how we do our job as images of God. That's how we inspire respect and worship to God from us and from others. In the words of Jesus, we do good works, loving works, so that people can see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven. That's from Matthew 5:16. This idea of glorifying God, right? It's super abstract, but what does it look like? Well, we glorify God when the way we live as image bearers of God truly points to God. When our lives represent God, so that we, as well as those around us, can look at us and know the glory and the beauty and the love of God through who we are. All of us need to grow in love. And love isn't just this like that gooey feeling you feel towards other people. For me these days, love means trying to be more disciplined with my time. Right? I've been stuck in the habits of like reading Asian cartoons and playing mobile games, but that isn't done out of love. Like I kind of lie to myself and say, oh no, this is good self-care, keep it up. But if anything, it's actually done out of laziness, like an unwillingness to live, to do better things with my time. But to love means to live in a sacrificial way for those around me. The way we spend our time and energy is going to be the best way to love others, by being present, by being intentional. Our second point is the meaning of life is to enjoy God. And that's helpful for us. This idea of enjoyment. Everyone revolves life plans around pleasure, right? Whether it's enjoying something now or something later, even kids, right? So here are some life goals set out by kids that think that, they think would make them the happiest. So I like this one. For this kid, this is his plan to happiness. He writes, I'm 7, I want to be 8. Because obviously, 8-year-olds have a much better life than 7-year-olds. Here's a bucket list from another kid. What are 3 things you want to do in the future? 1, get a girlfriend. 2, kiss her. 3, rule the world. And here's my favorite one. Chris's dream is to be an amazing basketball player, just like Michael Jordan. And this is how he's going to get there. 1, get bigger. 2, shave his head. And 3, to become black. Because those are the characteristics of his hero, right? See, whether these life plans are silly or even sophisticated or detailed, the thing that ties them all together is that the planner believes that this will be good for them. The best way to enjoyment and pleasure and happiness, that's what you plan for, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to know that God's plan is the best way to pursue happiness. See, in verse 28, it says this: God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. See, the first words spoken to people by God is a command, right? A command to be fruitful and increase in number, to rule over all he has created. As God's image, we're asked to do as he did with creation, to manage it in a way that produces good things. That is our job. And perhaps our initial reaction is, work, job, responsibility, fine, I'll do it. But that's totally wrong. God didn't mean for this task to be dreadful. No, it specifically says that God blessed us and then gave us this task. And the word blessed kind of means happy and fortunate. And this is a good thing. Something that is meant to be enjoyed. Just as God enjoyed creation when he looked at it and said it was very good, we too are meant to join God in enjoying his creation, and in that also enjoying him. Enjoying him in our work and in our friendships and in our families and all we do. I remember I asked a youth once, I asked him, if you could live in any world that's ever thought of, Pokemon, Naruto, Star Wars, World of Warcraft, what would it be? And he thought about it for a second, and then he answered, Minecraft. And I assume he said Minecraft because he thought that would be the most fun world to live in. And I found it hilarious because what is Minecraft? Minecraft is pretty much a very pixelated version of human beings increasing in number, filling and subduing the earth, ruling over creation, and making it awesome. So in a sense, us in real life, we're living out high quality Minecraft. It's meant to be fun and enjoyable. It's a blessing. God blesses us because he wants us to be happy with him, completely satisfied in him. When the Bible tells us to rejoice in the Lord always, that's not like this optional suggestion that we get to like take it or leave it. No, that's an instruction given to every Christian. But what does that look like? Well, this week I was actually super lucky to see it lived out. On Wednesday night we had a Bible study, and coincidentally it was actually about the image of God. But after our study was done, a few of us stayed behind to catch up. And Jess and Amanda up in Edmonton, they were sharing about their lives, right? And they were telling us stories upon stories of all the things that were going wrong in their life, right? They lost their TV, so what they do now is they sit on their couch and just stare at a blank wall. Their oven got child locked, and their favorite non-stick pan was in there, so they can't make the best eggs anymore because their pan was stuck in the oven. They're stressed from work, and they're just living this super rough sounding life. But the way they told us, it was actually full of laughter and joy, right? They laughed about what they did because they didn't have these things, right? Like they tried new air fryer recipes, and they tested their new winter jackets outside. Like literally, Jess just put on her jacket, went outside, and stood there outside her house to see if it was warm. And all these other silly things that made life so enjoyable. And I was completely amazed by this because I felt like if I was in their shoes in a different city with all these things going wrong, I would have moped about it and I would have been super negative. And yet, after the Zoom call, I told Christine that I wanted that. I wanted what they had. To enjoy life so well despite the circumstances. And I think that they're doing a good job of enjoying the goodness of God by making the best of whatever they've been given. That's the kind of mentality you need to rejoice in the Lord always. So in our daily lives, make sure you regularly find reasons to thank God. For some of us, that means we need to slow down. Take time to appreciate the things that we're doing. For example, I've been trying to cut down multitasking. So instead of like eating while watching a show, I'm trying to separate the two so that I can enjoy each activity on its own. Perhaps it's useful for you to keep a document or a blog or a notepad of all the things that you're grateful for and to add on to that whenever you can. But whatever the case is, we need to be intentional about enjoying something the way God intended it. And then giving thanks to God for it. Because it's those who rejoice in the Lord who learn to trust Him. And when the really hard times come, we can go through those hard times already trained to see the goodness of God the whole time. And we'll come out better for it. So far in our message, I made 2 points. The meaning of life is to glorify God, and the meaning of life is to enjoy God. Even though I made those 2 different points, they're actually 2 halves of the same coin. What does that mean? That means that we glorify God by actually enjoying Him. And that we enjoy God by glorifying Him, right? God is most pleased with us when we understand that He, as the source of all good, is the best plan for our happiness. And when we live our faith out according to that truth. Let's end with a recap. What is the meaning of life? 1, it's to glorify God. By loving boldly in ways that other people would not dare to love if they were not Christians. And 2, to enjoy God forever. Like, pause to give thanks and really enjoy something the way God intended it. Enjoying God strengthens our ability to make the sacrifices that love requires. The Bible tells us that these are 2 sides of the same coin. The most joyful life is where we love boldly and give thanks for God's gifts and seek the treasure that God promises. As we conclude our time together today, let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Thank you for joining us today. Go in peace.